First of all, there are two sheets. One sheet is a summary of the Gemorah that we did last week, which is from Daf Beis at the beginning of the Gemorah all the way till the next area, which is the definition of a walled city. So, and we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to go over, hopefully, review the Gemorah a little bit also. The other thing is that we didn't finish up with Taanis Esther, so I want to finish up a little bit about that. So, if you remember in the summary of the Gemorah, to summarize, so the Mishnah, basically there are two things that are covered in what we did last time. There are two major areas. The first major area is that the Gemorah wants to bring a source. The law in the Mishnah that these Kfarim can read earlier does not appear in the actual Megillah itself. So of course the Gemorah wants to bring a source. How do we know, that what is the source for this? So the Gemorah first states, well, the source is simply a rabbinic decree. The rabbis decided to allow these towns, these small towns, to read earlier. Why did they give them this dispensation? So the Gemorah in the beginning said because they wanted them to be free on Purim to bring food and water to the cities, but the conclusion later in the Gemorah is that that's not really the reason. The reason is because they brought food and water to the cities, so the rabbis gave them a special leniency to reward them because they helped out their brethren during the year, not because of just Purim, because they were so helpful. So they decided to be very easy with them on Purim, since they did not know how to read the Megillah or they did not have minyanim in their city, depending on which commentary you look at. So therefore, in order to be lenient with them, that they didn't have to schlep to the city on Purim when they were already coming anyway on Monday and Thursday, or according to some, they came for Taanis Esther. So since they were coming to the city before, we didn't make them schlep twice in 1 week to the city, so they were lenient with them and allowed them to read the Megillah earlier.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
When do they fast, though?
They fast on the 13th, regardless. Even if they read it on the 13th or whatever, they're fasting on the 13th. Yeah. Okay. Now, unless of course it falls out on a Shabbos, then of course, but they fast on the day that they can fast on the day they're reading it.
Even though they might have read it 2 days before.
Right, even if they might have read it 2 days before. Okay. Now because everybody else is fasting then, so it's not right. In other words, we don't break up the fast. Similarly, even if they read it before, the Suda, the meal, is still on Purim. They still make their festive meal on Purim, even though they've read the Megillah. It was a special thing because they didn't know how to read so well, and they didn't have a minyan. It was only for the reading of the Megillah, which requires a minyan, requires knowledge. There's a bigger mitzvah to do with the minyan, that we gave them this leniency. Now, so if the rabbis decreed it, the question is, what right do they have? A great Beis Din as the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah, which created the mitzvah Purim, so their ruling cannot be supplanted by a lesser court, and there was no great court as the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah that came later. So how could the later rabbis decree that you could read it on a day which was not set up by the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah? So the Gemorah answered to this, that actually it was decreed by the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah, and that there is a remez, there is a hint in the Megillah that extra days were added. What is a remez? So there's a machlokas. One learns it out from the word zmanim, zmanehem. In other words, it could have said zmanam or zmanim, but it says zmanehem. Extra days, the extra reading, the extra terminology implies that we add zmanim harbe. Many days were adjusted for Kriyas HaMegillah. And then the Gemorah explains that the many days has to be equal to what we already had, which was 2 days, the 14th and 15th. So we add 2 days. So we should add, in other words, the 12th and the 13th. But the 13th, we don't need a special limud, because once you're adding extra days, it's logical that the 13th would have been added because it's man kila l'kol, which we will get to momentarily what that means. Why the 13th, we would understand logically to add it. There are 3 different opinions as to why the 13th would be added without having a special limud. That's what we're going to finish discussing tonight. Now, after that, after the Gemorah gives you this idea that these days, these extra days have been added, and now you've got the source for the extra days, the next question that the Gemorah talks about, and that's what we'll talk about towards the end of the Shiur, or if not, we'll have to do it next week, and that's who is the author of the Mishnah. First we discuss what are the sources of the Mishnah, and now we want to know who the author of the Mishnah. If you'll notice, I wrote in the outline, there's really a subtext here. The subtext really is, we want to know who the author of the Mishnah is, because what we're really after is, does the law apply today? Now, as the Mishnah says, these little towns can read earlier. Is this applicable today? Are there other Tanoim who argue with this law that perhaps we don't paskin like this Mishnah? Maybe we go like another opinion that isn't mentioned in this Mishnah. And if the Mishnah is true, are there any extenuating circumstances that will change what we do today, which we're going to see, yes, we really don't paskin like the Mishnah at face value that the Kfarim do not read earlier nowadays. And the reason for that, we'll see again, depends upon a machlokas rishonim, what was the reason why it's not applicable today. So those are the two areas that we discuss in the Gemorah. That takes you to the Gemorah till Daf Beis Amud Beis, till it gets into the part about the walled cities. Now, so let's go back to the first thing. And the first thing was, on the 13th, so we said the 13th of Adar, we would have known, even had we not had a special limud, we would have known to add it. Now, I pointed out last week, it's not that we would have known. Without having a limud at all, we wouldn't know to add the 13th. It's only, in other words, because we just can't add a day to it, even if you say Zman Kila L'Kol, because they didn't make a holiday on the 13th. The holiday was when they rested, not when they fought. So the idea of adding an extra day is once you've already added a day, which has no shaykhs to Purim, like you've added the 12th, then you understand the 13th would be added. Then you don't need it. So if you're going to add 2 extra days, the 13th wouldn't have to be included, because once you know one day is added before the 13th, it makes sense that the 13th would be included, because the 13th has some is applicable to Purim, because that's when they fought the enemy and when they beat their enemy. So if you're going to add the 12th, you're certainly going to add the 13th. So the other extra day would have been the 11th. Now, why is the 13th so logical that it would have been added? So there are 3 different opinions that we mentioned. The Rosh mentions the 3 opinions. So Rashi's opinion is because the miracle of Purim really took place on the 13th. That's when they beat their enemy. But they rested from the fight on the 14th. They couldn't make a celebration on the 13th. They were busy fighting. So the next day they celebrated. So that became the day of Purim. And in Shushan, they fought on the 14th also. So they rested on the 15th. So the day in which you rest, in other words, became the holiday, but the day in which the miracle happened was really a day earlier. So therefore, if you're going to add a day, if you're going to add the 12th, certainly you'd add the 13th when the nace happened. So that's the way Rashi learns. That's why the 13th would have been a logical extension to be added. The Re learns, based on the Yerushalmi, that it says Kayamim Asher Nachu, like the days in which they rested. So the days in which they rested, they didn't rest on the 13th. They were busy fighting. So you had 2 days which they rested, which would have been the 11th and the 12th. So then the Yerushalmi says, well, if you could read it the 11th and 12th, and you could read it the 14th and the 15th, you can certainly read it the 13th. You couldn't read it too and then have a break. So in other words, it's a kal v'chomer. It's logical that you would add the 13th also. That's the way the Re learns. The problem with the Re is that the Yerushalmi says, doesn't call it Zman Kehila L'Kol, when the people, got together, it calls it Zman Milchama. In other words, it's the day of Milchama, and our Gemorah doesn't say that. And also, our Gemorah doesn't say it's a kal v'chomer. The Yerushalmi says if you're reading it the 11th and 12th, the 13th is a kal v'chomer. Not because the people were gathered together on the 13th, because if you do the 11th and 12th and 14th and 15th, you can certainly do the 13th. Our Gemorah doesn't even hint at such a concept. So our Gemorah doesn't go like the Yerushalmi, and therefore the Rosh says the Re is really, it's fine with the Yerushalmi, but it's off base in our Gemorah. Comes Rabeinu Tam, And Rabeinu Tam says that Yud Gimel's Megillah L'Kol means that the people get together on the fast day because in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, the first fight with Amalek, they fasted and they davened, and a lot of the halachas of Taanis were learned out from the fast with Moshe Rabbeinu and Amalek, and therefore when they fought Amalek in the time of Haman, it's logical that they fasted and got together and davened together. Therefore, to commemorate this, the people took upon themselves the 13th of Adar as a fast day to commemorate the fast that they did during the time of Mordechai and Esther. And on that day, in other words, since they fasted then on the 13th, so the Kfarim are going to come to the city on the 13th, regardless of whether they're reading the Torah or not, because they are going to read the Torah and they're going to daven slichas and everything. So that day would be the day, in other words, it would make sense to add, because that's a day when they are coming together anyway. So if you're going to add an extra day, so you certainly would add the 13th because they're anyway coming, hopefully, to the city. Now, what comes out, so those are the three different ways. But the main point that really comes out, according to Rabeinu Tam versus the others, is what is the source for Taanis Esther? We do not have a Gemorah that talks about Taanis Esther. There's no Gemorah that says that we have to fast on the 13th of Adar, with the exception of this Gemorah, according to Rabeinu Tam, that Yud Gimel's Megillah L'Kol, that Rabeinu Tam interprets that they get together to fast. But without Rabeinu Tam's pshat, according to Rashi and according to the Ri, we have no source in any Gemorah that mentions Taanis Esther. There's no Gemorah that mentions it at all. So according to the Ri, it's actually part of the mitzvah Purim, that the people fasted in the time of Esther, and then they continue to fast. But and if it was added by the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah, because Yud Gimel's Megillah L'Kol, then that means it went back already to the time of Mordechai and Esther. However, according to the others, we don't know when Taanis Esther came about. When did it originate? It's not mentioned in the Gemorah. On the contrary, from the Gemorah it appears that they didn't fast on Yud Gimel. Why? Because the Gemorah says that on Yud Gimel there was a holiday, that Niknor was defeated. He wanted to destroy the Beis Hamikdash during the time of the Hashmonoim, and they defeated him on Yud Gimel Adar, and they made it a holiday. Now, how could they be fasting and make it a holiday? So we're going to see there are various. So some say it actually was a takana from the Gaonim. It actually came after the time of the Gemorah because it's not mentioned in the Gemorah. So the fast of Esther might have been a takana from the Gaonim, and it actually might have just been a minhag. So what would the difference between Rabeinu, the Tam's Shita, and the others? According to Rabeinu Tam, if it's from the Tanakh, then we might have to be machmir, because Dvri Kabbalah could Dvri Torah, and we'd have to be machmir, and a pregnant woman might have to fast, etc. If it's a minhag, and it came in the time of the Gaonim, and in the time of the Gemorah they never fasted, it was a holiday, then we can be very makel, because this fast was not even one of the fasts that were makubal from this man of the Gemorah per se, and therefore, since it's only a custom, we can be makel on somebody who's sick, or somebody who's pregnant, or somebody even who has a terrible headache, that they would not have to fast. So we're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch. Now, there's one other thing, and then we'll see the psukim inside and see the various meforshim, and that is that there are actually there are actually three possibilities over here of what's going on. Okay, one possibility is the 13th of Adar we keep, because like Rabeinu Tam says, they fasted in the time of Mordechai and Esther before they fought. The other thing is the 13th of Adar became a fast later in the time of the Gaonim. Why did the Gaonim make that a fast? So many opinions are, it really has nothing to do with the fast, whether they fasted before they fought, we don't know. Maybe it's only was Moshe Rabeinu. We don't know that necessarily that they fasted. And even if they did, they fasted because they were going to battle. We're not going to battle. So why do we have to fast? So they say, in other words, and not only that, if it was a holiday at some point, so they couldn't have fasted. So how do we make a fast day? Even though they say the Megillah's Taanis is batal, And those holidays that they celebrated after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, they're no longer holidays because they were celebrated because the Beis Hamikdash wasn't destroyed. And if in the end it was, except for Chanukah and Purim, everything else in Megillah's Taanis is batel. But they say you still shouldn't make a fast day on something that was a holiday. So how did they make Purim into a fast day? Not only that, there was a special halacha that you don't fast on a day before a rabbinic holiday. You can fast the day before Shabbos, but not on a rabbinic holiday because people might end up fasting on the holiday itself. And the Rabbanim want to make chizuk, they want to make their dinim stronger, so they didn't allow. So even though Megillah's Taanis is batel, some say the idea of fasting before a holiday isn't batel. So how do we fast on the 13th when it's a day before Purim? These are questions that we'll see that the Rishonim discuss. So the other possibility of Taanis Esther is, after all, it's called Taanis Esther. It's not called Taanis Purim. So some say it really is a representative of the fast that Esther did, the 3-day fast that Esther made before she went to Achashverosh. So the Esther fasted in Nisan, in the month of Nisan, around pesak time. So they say, we'll see, it's actually Masechta Sofrim. We can't fast in Nisan for 2 reasons. One is it's the month that we had our Geula of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and we don't want to mar it with fasting. And the second reason is that the Hakamas HaMishkan, the setting up of the Mishkan, was done in Nisan. So the first week or so was already a holiday, and so therefore we don't want to fast. We don't fast then. So therefore, what they did was they transposed it from Nisan to Adar, to before Purim, but it really is not, it's Taanis Esther, it really is a commemorative of the fast that Esther did. But we are too weak to fast 3 days, and we certainly can't. Now, some will see, according to the Masechta Sofrim, some people did fast 3 days, but not in a row. They did Bahav. They did Monday, Thursday, and Monday. As a fast, but in Adar. They did it in Adar. Now, so these are the possibilities. Now, if that's true, then it's certainly a Makel fast, because it's not even the fast that Esther really did. We're transposing it. It's like a nitcha. It's being pushed aside. A nitcha we're always very Makel on. So, in other words, you have both sides of the coin. According to Rabeinu Tam, it's possible it's machmir, and according to the others, it's possible that it's very makel. We'll see momentarily how the Shulchan Aruch paskins and what the halach is. Do we worry about Rabeinu Tam or not? First, I want to show you a few of the Rishonim. Now, one of the main sources of, they say that Taanis Esther might be from Megillah Esther, and that is, if you look, I don't know if you still have the one that's marked 10:22:18. It's the first part is Megillah Esther itself by the pesukim. So towards the end of the 9th parak of Megillah Esther, pasuk lamed aleph. So it says L'kayim is that Esther sent out sporim to all the Jews, divrei shalom v'emes, all right, words of peace and truth. L'kayim is yemei hapurim ha'ela b'zmanehem, that the Jews should keep Purim, in other words, for this generation and all future generations, in its proper time. Kasher kiyam aleya Mordechai HaYehudi v'Esther HaMalka, just like Mordechai Yehudi and Esther HaMalka kept Purim. But kasher kimu al nafsham, just like they established it for themselves, v'alzarim, and then their children, divrei hatzomos v'zakosam, the words or the idea, the concept of the tzomos, the fasting, and the crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, so what it really says, as Esther said, keep Purim just like we kept it, and just like we kept the fast days and the crying out. Now, according to Rabeinu Tam, that could simply be going on Yud Gimel Adar, just like we fasted Yud Gimel Adar to fast, right? So keep it like we kept Yud Gimel Adar. The other shot could be, no, keep it just like we kept the 3-day fast on ourselves, so you should keep Purim also. All right, you should keep Purim also, and that could be a hint at keeping the 3 days. Now, according to some, they accepted just like they accepted that first they wanted to make malacha asar on Purim, that you couldn't work like on a yontif. People didn't accept it, so it could be they didn't accept the fast. They accepted the Purim, but it could be that it's just a idea, just like we kept the fast, you should at least keep the days of Purim. Or it could be hinting at the 3-day fast of Taanis Esther, which would be, Now, that would be the simple way. But comes along the Ibn Ezra, but he's not the only one. The Rishonim say it. And look what the Ibn Ezra says. He says, it's the next one. V'tam kimu al nasham yalzaram divrei hatzomos al das rabim al yom Taanis Esther. He said many people say that this has reference to Taanis Esther, and that's how Rabeinu Tam would learn. In other words, what Esther is saying is, keep Purim and keep the Taanis that we kept. You don't have to keep it in Nisan like we did, but keep Taanis Esther on Yud Gimel Adar as a commemoration, or it could mean just like we fasted Yud Gimel Adar, keep that Taanis also. Either way, it's still found in the Tanakh that Esther is referring to the Taanis of Yud Gimel Adar. The Hamachishim Amru ki al shlosha yomim shisanu b'Nisan hakasam adaber. Some say Esther was telling them to keep 3 days in Nisan, but he said that's a machishim. Those are, they're disproven. That's not true. V'kol Yisrael ruyin lishanos kain tamid, and they would hold that you'd have to fast 3 days in Nisan. We don't do that. Well, the daiti shachachamenu zal kavu hatainis yom hapachad. They made it on the day of fear, meaning on the 13th, when they feared for their lives. V'tam divrei hatzomos ala niskar b'sefer Zechariah shein b'tamus v'av v'tishrei v'tevis. So, in other words, what the Ibn Ezra is saying is that Esther says, keep Purim just like you kept remember, this is after Chorban Abayis. So they had Tisha B'Av, Shivasa B'Tamas, Som Gedalia, and Asar B'Tevis. Just like the people have accepted those days, keep these days. What is the pshat? Ki kaimo Yehudim al nafsham, lismoch b'mei Purim kasher kimu al nafsham, yalzaram lisanos b'mei avelim kasher huklu ha'ir, etc. What he's basically saying is, Esther was up against a problem. The Chachamim at first did not want to create Purim. They didn't want to have it as a holiday for future generations. So how could we add on? How could we be Moshev onto the Torah, a new holiday? What Esther says is, wait a minute. You've already added on to the Torah. What have you added on? You have Tisha B'Av, Shivasa B'Tamas, Asar B'Tevis, and Som Gedalah. You've already done. So what Esther was saying is, you should keep Purim. Why? Why can we add on? Kasher kimu al nasham v'yazam divrei hatzomos v'zakosam. Just like you've already added on the tzomos of Tisha B'Av, etc., and you had no problem adding that, add Purim also. Because you see, you can add on. You weren't against adding on the bad days, so add on the good days. Add on the Chag of Purim as well.
She wrote that? You want to say Esther or just Megillah Esther?
No, it's a Megillah Esther, but it seems like Esther said it. It says, "Vayishlach sporim el kol yurim v'titkov Esther." It says one of the Rishonim that says that if you look on the back, so let me see.
On the back of what?
Oh, that page, that same page.
Okay, second page.
Oh no, it's not on that page. All right, hold on one second. No, it's not on that page. It's on another page. It's here. It's in the Ron actually.
What's
the Ron
the
on
page
it's on page 1, source page 1A 10/22/18.
Okay, got it.
All right. Let me see where the Ron says it. I don't know if we'll have time to go through this. I'll tell you, look, it's here where it says Ron on the Rif. He brings down some of the Shitas, and the Rabbit says it. So he says, he's saying also that they also kept it like they kept the Dalit Tzomos. If you look at the Rabbit, it's the last one towards the end, he says it's also going on the Dalit Tzomos, just like the Ibn Ezra says. And so the Rabbit it also learns the same way. That Esther basically what she was doing was presenting an argument. If you could have the Dalit Tzomos, then you should have this you should have this as well. Now, if you go back,
The almost weren't yet. She's.
yeah, they were, because we had Churban Abayis already, so they had them already. Now, if you go back to the other page, So if you look at on the second page, there's the Masechtas Katanos. So Masechtas Sofrim. So Masechtas Sofrim says, Shaloshes Yemei Hatzom, the 3 days of fasting for Taanis Esther, Ein Masanan Oso Ritzufim El Prudin. You don't do it in order, you split them. Sheni Chamishi B'Sheni. Rabosenu Shebe'eretz Yisrael Nagul Is Anos Acher Yemei Purim. They would even do it after Purim. In other words, might have done one before and then some after. Mipnei Niknor, because they didn't want to fast on the 13th because of Niknor, the Yom Niknor, which was a holiday. And the other thing is, if Tisha B'Av, like say, comes out on Shabbos, we push it off to Sunday. We don't make it early, because when we deal with tragedies and terrible calamities, we try to push it away further. So Taanis Esther, also, these people pushed it to 3 days. They pushed it off later. Now, then Masechtas Katanos later brings Minhag Rabbeinu Shebamariv. The rabbis in Eretz Yisrael had a minhag, some of them anyway. Lisana Shlosha Yemei Tzom, Mordechai v'Esther Prudos. They separated it. Uliachar Purim Sheni v'Chamishi v'Sheni. In other words, immediately after Purim, the Monday, Thursday, and Monday afterwards, they fasted. Why didn't they do it in Nisan? Because that's when the Mishkan was erected. So 12 days already they were in holiday. So those days are considered like a Yom Tov. We don't want to fast. In the future, the base of Mikdash will be built up in Nisan. Nothing is new, so just like the old one, this one will be then also. Now, the Shiltas of Rabbi Chai Gon also learns like Rabeinu Tam that the Yud Gimel Zman Kilu L'Kol is talking about the Yom Taanis. Shahakol Mischansin o Misanim B'Yud Gimel B'Yadar. Shekach Kasub Nikalu HaYehudim B'Yamad Al Nafsham, etc., etc. And okay, so here we have. Here you have basically. So some say, based upon the Masechta Sofrim, that some of the Rabbanim did 3 days, and it was, Monday, Thursday, and Monday. So, and we don't do that basically. So if it was a takana, how could we not do it? So some say, you see from here, in other words, that there was no Yom Kavua for Taanis Esther. Some didn't want to do it on the 13th because of Yom Niknor. They didn't want to make that a day of fasting. So they did it on a different day. So according to many, Yud Gimel's Mankil L'Kol really is not going on Taanis Esther, per se. I mean, it's a day, like Rashi said, the day of the Nes, or according to Rabeinu Debris, it's a day of the Milchama. But it's not going on Taanis Esther, per se, because Taanis Esther was not something Ladoros. It really, there was no Yom Kavua, per se. And you'll see the Mishnah Berurah even brings down, too, that there, and as a result, we'll see the halacha is that if Purim comes out on Shabbos and you go back to Thursday, that's how we paskin. There's machlokas Rishonim. Some Rishonim say you do it on Friday, and some say Thursday. But since it wasn't a Yom Kavua, if there's a bris on Thursday, the people involved with the bris can eat, because they don't have to make it on Thursday, and they can fast on Friday, because there are some shittas that you fast on Friday. It isn't a Yom Kavua, per se. Now, the problem that we have really is, how do we fast before a holiday, number one. Number two, and this is a problem that bothers me, and that is that we know by the 4 fast days of Tisha B'Av, yeah.
We fast the firstborn, fast before Pesach?
That's something else. So first of all, that's also a custom. That's number one. All right. That also, it's not a halacha. There's no place in halacha that they must fast. That's a custom. Second of all, some say that there's an inyan of everybody not to eat before the meal, to be hungry for the matzah. So there could be kiyum hamitzvah there. That's what is said by Purim also. that one of the reasons why Taanis Esther was allowed, even if it's Yom Niknor, even if it was at some point a holiday, is because it's not a fast day that's a sad fast day. Now, what bothered me is the 4 fast days, what do we say? That they'll be turned into Yemei Simcha, right? In the time of Mashiach, once the Nevuah comes true that the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, those days are going to become holidays. So if that's true, if Taanis Esther was because of the calamity, so the Nevuah came true that we were saved, so we shouldn't have to fast anymore. It was based upon the concept of keeping a fast day only because the calamities are still kind of in balance. We're living in a period, we could call it, Ein Shalom V'Ein, there's no gezeras. Yesh Shalom V'Ein gezeras. If it's Yesh Shalom and Ein gezeros, it becomes a simcha. But it's Ein Shalom, but Yesh V'Ein gezeras. We don't have a gezerah per se. If we had a gezerah on us, like they were killing Jews, we would be mechuyev to fast dvray Kabbalah per se. With the exception of Tisha B'Av, we have to do even ein gezerahs. But the other fast days, it's Ratzu Misanim, Ratzu Lo Misanim, but we were makabel to fast because we don't have gezerahs on us, but it's not a shalom. Shalom is defined, according to the Rambam, as having the Mashiach. And according to others, it's defined as having the Beis HaMikdash. But either way, we don't have either, so it's Ein Shalom. We don't have a time period of Shalom right now. But we certainly don't have, at this point, at least, thank God, right now, we don't have Gezeras. But once it becomes Shalom, and in other words, either that the prophecies are fulfilled, there is no fasting. It says the Yemei Eivel will become Yemei Simcha. So why is it that Purim, and it says Renefach, that it's turned, the Chodesh Adar was turned from a bad day into a good day?
But these arguments say that there's no connection between Taanis Esther and the 4 Tzomos.
Huh?
These arguments.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is that the logic of not fasting on those Somos is because they ended up, we're still standing in balance. We don't know what's going to be, so there's no
There's
simcha.
no reason to say Taanis Esther has that same logic.
No, I understand. But from a standpoint of logic, if you say you fast because of a calamity, and the calamity is now averted and you don't have it, then we shouldn't fast. Because in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, once they didn't have a calamity, matter of fact, Rashi and others held that during Bai Sheni they didn't fast on Tisha B'Av. The Rambam seems to hold they did because until Mashiach comes, because the Bai Sheni wasn't the same as Bai Rishon. But according to Rashi, they didn't fast because once the good things exist and we don't have it, so why should we fast on Taanis Esther? Now, we could say, well, it's still Ein Shalom and we have to worry, it's a day to worry, we don't have, but still it ended up good. So some say that's why we fast, that Taanis Esther is really a fast day to herald in Purim. That what Taanis Esther is it teaches you that when you fast, Hashem listens to you and your prayers are answered, and therefore, in other words, there's a lesson here that we should fast right before Purim, because that's a lesson that it's a happy fast. It's a fast that ended up with a simcha to teach us a lesson that when we fast and when we cry out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are answered, and therefore, what?
Don't hit the table.
And therefore, in other words, we're answered, and therefore we're allowed to do it on Yom Niknor, we're allowed to do it before Purim, because it actually is connected. Matter of fact, I said once, they say play on words. Purim, they say Yom HaKippurim. It's a day like Purim. How is it a day like Purim? So I said because Purim had tshuva, tefillah. We have tzedakah also. We have shalach manos and everything else, and matanos levyonim. So you have tshuva, you have tefillah, and you have tzedakah. Ma'avir Yisrael gezerah. That's what we learned from Taanis Esther. So Yom HaKippurim is the same thing. In other words, Yom Kippur should be the same idea. It's a day like Purim that we should be answered. If you do these things, you're answered for Latova. Now, so you have these two opinions as to what the Tanakh is talking about. Is it three opinions? Is the Tanakh talking about Yud Gimel when it says Esther said keep the fast days? Is it talking about Yud Gimel Adar? Is it talking about the 3 days in Nisan, which we don't do? Or is it talking about the transposing of the 3 days of Nisan to Yud Gimel before, or at least some day before Purim. Those are the 3 ways of understanding the Pesukim. I would give another little, kvetch to this thing, and I would say, now, we know the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah were the ones that created Purim. What do we know about the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah? Who exactly were? It's very sketchy. All right, what do we know? We know that they're mentioned, of course, in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. And what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah just says, clearly, really only makes 2 statements about them. The first statement is that Moshe kibel Torah Sinai. He gave it to Yoshua. Moshe passed on the Torah to Yoshua. Yoshua to the Skenim to the Nevi'im. But Nevi'im masul the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. The Nevi'im gave it to the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. And they said 3 things. You should be misunan bedin. You should be deliberate in judgment. In other words, weigh everything very carefully. But mido talmidim harbe, have a lot of students. And I'll tell you what I think about this. V'yasa siyag l'Torah, and make a fence around the Torah. So the first thing we know is that they got the Torah from the Nevi'im. So they're the transitionary period of the Nevi'im. The next thing we know, the next thing that's mentioned about them, is only one other statement. Shimon HaTzadik haya mashiri Keneset Hagadolah. Shimon HaTzadik was from the remnant, the end of the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. So the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah starts with Ezra and Nehemiah, etc., and it ends with Shimon HaTzadik. And the Rambam brings down in his commentary to the Parashat Mishnah, and I think on the Yad Chazaka, he also mentions that it consisted of 120 members. But the question is, are they all together at once? Because if you look at it, the Shimon HaTzadik, according to many, met with Alexander the Great. He was the one that supposedly they wanted to Jewish people that didn't believe in the Torah Shabbal Peh. So they told Alexander, the Jews are plotting against you. And when Alexander the Great saw him, he said, this is the guy whose face I see when I go into battle. So Shimon HaTzadik, so let's take the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. So you had the beginning of the Persian Empire after the Babylonian Empire. So there was 2 waves of Jews leaving. The first wave, they left. Zerubbabel left with, I think it was the Kohen Gadol. So they came, in other words, they left to go to Eretz Yisrael. They claimed that the Persian Empire, they wanted people to settle. They wanted to give religious freedoms to people. So they left. They go to Eretz Yisrael. But the first wave were people that were assimilated, that had married Goyim. There were people that were Mamzerim, etc., mentioned in the Mishnah and Kedushin. And then about 60, and now the Kuzari says that the reason why the Hashem did not create the same type of Beis Hamikdash by the second bias is most of the Jews remained in Bavel. They didn't heed the call to go back. They should have all gone back to Israel, but they didn't. They were complacent and happy in Bavel, so most of the Jews stayed. So 60 years later, Ezra went with Nehemiah, etc. So this is the beginnings of the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. Now, until that time, from the time of Ezra till Shimon HaTzadik, so if you say Shimon HaTzadik was the one that met with Alexander the Great, that's close to 150 years later. That's in the time of the Chashmonoim, all right, which is approximately 200 years from the first settlement, so 60 years later when Ezra came, at least like 140, 150 years. So that means Anshei Keneset Hagadolah is going over a period of 150 years. Now, if that's true, I said we could understand maybe why it's called Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. It was a long, and that was a period over a long period of time. A Gedolah wasn't one court. It was a long period of courts that were passed down one to the other, and then the end of the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah would have been with Shimon HaTzadik, 150, 160 years later. The other thing is, too, the 120 who said they were all at once. There's other places said there were 80. We know Sanhedrin is really 72. Who said they were all at once? It could be over that period, if you add up everybody, So you have maybe 120. I don't know. And therefore be Gedolah because there were a greater number, because we attribute this large sum of number to Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. Certainly if they were there all together, it would be called Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. Now, the Gemorah gives another reasons why it's called Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. What I'm saying is, it could be a literal reason. It was a great court because it lasted over a great period of time, or it had a great number of people there. But the other simple explanation, without going into the Gemorah, would be it was a great court, meaning the effect of the court. It was the greatest Sanhedrin because it affected Judaism more than any other Sanhedrin, because the other Sanhedrin, they might have passed a Shiloh here and there. The Anshei Keneset Hagadolah changed the entire face of Judaism. It was a transition from the time of the Beis HaMikdash, where people came to the Beis HaMikdash and saw Nisim Nigloim, they saw miracles that were, out in the open, to a time of Hester Panim where the people didn't see miracles. There was no longer a Beis HaMikdash for the people in Bavel, the people in Chutz La'aretz. The majority of the Jews are there. They have no contact with the Beis HaMikdash. So what did they do right away? Davening. They created all the tefillas, the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. Because if they didn't have the tefillas, how would these people have any connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The other thing is, Ezra made Kriyas Torah, because if they don't learn, they're not going to have any connection either. They were amongst their own people, and they had the influence of Torah around them. They had the Beis HaMikdash and the influence of Torah. Now they don't have it. So this is a transitionary period from Nevi'im, where the word of Hashem was spread, to a period where there's very little connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore, what do you have basically? You basically have a situation where they have to strengthen the Torah. That's why it says they should have Talmidim Harbe, is one of the things, because we have to create a situation of Torah learning, or they won't have a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we have to make a siyag l'Torah, because they are not faced with the Torah on a day-to-day basis like they were. They're not in the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. We have to worry about protecting them amongst the Goyim. So I said, and now the Gemorah, I'll just tell it to you outside, in Yuma Samches Amud Beis, it says the reason why they're called Anshei Keneset Hagadolah is because Moshe Rabbeinu said in the davening, Akel HaGadolah Gibor V'Hanorah. It was changed later by Daniel and by, who was the other one that, Yirmiyahu. It was changed later because when they saw the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, they said, what kind of Kadosh Baruch was Nora, and etc. And when they saw that the Jews were put into slavery and taken away, so they took out those words that showed the awesomeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah returned it. They said, what's the awesomeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That even among the Goyim, the Jews still exist. In other words, there's 70 nations of Goyim ready to pounce down and get rid of us, but you know what? We're still here. So that's why Hashem is Akel HaGadolah, that it's awesome and great, because the Jewish people still exist as a testament to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's greatness. So I said this could be the pshat also. What Esther was tying with the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah was, she said, look, you've added the fast days. The fast days are really showing that we are a people that's downtrodden and have been destroyed. So in Chutz La'aretz, there's going to be a despondency. The people are going to feel like Hashem has left them. We have nothing. What do we have? We have fast days. That's what we've added. We've added terrible calamities. All we have are calamities, and now we're among the Goyim where we have even more calamities. But Purim basically shows what? That even in Chutz La'aretz, if one prays and one has a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are saved. So what Esther says is, if you're going to add the tzomos and the zakos and the screaming and the crying and the bad things, then you should certainly temper it with adding the good things. We should keep this the same way we kept that. If what you want is a people to have a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so she told them, the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah want that. If you want to make the people have a connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, you can't just put in those bad things. Just like you gave them Tisha B'Av, etc., give them also Purim and let them see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu works even in Chutz La'aretz with Nisim and etc. And that's how I would interpret the pasuk of Divrei Hatzomos. In other words, that it's going back to Tisha B'Av. it was more of an argument that just like you added that, add this. It was an argument that if you've added that, you should balance it by adding Purim to it as well. So anyway, so that's what we have. What's a halacha l'maisa? Let me just tell you that. And the halacha l'maisa, if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, did I give you the Shulchan Aruch on here? I think it is on this sheet. I have, I think everything on here. Hold on one second. Here's the Aruch HaShulchan.
Which page?
The last one.
Yeah.
2-4.
Yeah, look. You could look at the Aruch HaShulchan yourself. It's pretty simple. All right, here. Look at the last page, page 4. We're just going to go through this quickly. The final pesak. So what is the pesak of Taanis Esther? So the Shulchan Aruch reads on Chanukah Purim mutal lisanas l'tneim liachreya. On Chanukah and Purim, it is permissible to fast the days before and the days after. Why? Because even though we say Megillah's Taanis is batal, so some say it only means that the Megillah's Taanis is batal, but Chanukah and Purim are not batal. So if you couldn't fast the day before Chanukah, the day before Purim, and it's not batal, the day before shouldn't be batal either. So the Shulchan Aruch is machadesh, like many Rishonim say, that Megillah's Taanis isn't batal for the exact holiday, but that day before that was created for Megillah's Taanis, that is batal. So one is allowed to fast the day before and the day after, both Chanukah and Purim. Therefore, we could fast on the 13th. Misana, the next one. Misana b'Yud Gimel b'Adar. We fast on the 13th of Adar. V'im chal Purim b'Yachad b'Shabbos. If Purim comes out on Sunday, makdim l'sanas b'Yom Chamishi. We fast on the Thursday. This is like those Rishonim, the Tanchum, and others that say you don't fast Erev Shabbos for two reasons. A, you don't want to take away from preparing for Shabbos. You'll be sitting and saying Slichas and laning and Mincha. You've got Haftorah. We don't want to do that. We want to have time to prepare for Shabbos, so we don't want to have a fast on Erev Shabbos if we don't have to. And if you're pushing it off, already push it off to Thursday. The other thing is you don't want to go into Shabbos being ravishingly hungry. It's not kavadik for Shabbos. The difference would be something like if, let's say, Taanis Bechoros, the fast of the firstborn, falls out on a Friday. Well, if it's going into Shabbos hungry, you don't want to fast then either. You should push it off. But if it's because of the Slichas and the Haftarah, you don't have that. So you could fast. So there could be differences depending on what the reason is. Haggah, but Taanis Zoeinu Chova. So the Ramah says explicitly, this is not a chov. It's not like Rabeinu Tam. Ulechein yesh lahakil bo le'es hatzorach. Therefore, we can be makel, we can be lenient. Kagon muberis, a pregnant woman, or manikos, or one that's feeding, breastfeeding. O lechol l'shem bo sakana, a person that's sick, even though they're not in danger. Afilu rakov einayim, even if somebody has a bad headache, he's allowed to eat on Taanis Esther. She'im mitztarim harbe lo yisanu. If they have a terrible time fasting, so they could eat, v'yifru acher kach, and they'll make it up later. Now, the only time it talks about ever making up a fast after the fast is by Taanis Esther. For example, you broke Tisha B'Av, nobody says make it up. The reason why it's possible you can make up Taanis Esther is because it doesn't have a set date. Remember, people fasted Monday, Thursday, and Monday again. So it could be Taanis Esther you could make up. Second of all, when he says you make it up, he might mean you only make it up the next day, because we don't know whether the fast, when you're pushing it off, should be Thursday or Friday. So maybe it means you could make it up the next day, as he's going to explain in a second. But anybody who's healthy, lo yifreshu min hatzibur, he shouldn't break away from the tzibur, and he should fast on Taanis Esther, even though it might only be a minhag, and it's very makel, you should fast if you can. V'imchal Purim b'yom rishon shemasanim b'yom hei shalafanav v'chal bo bris milah. When it comes out and you push it to Thursday and there's a bris milah, mutar li'achal ala milah. You can eat for the milah. Ulamachar b'yom vav yisano ha'ochlem. And the people who ate then will fast on the Friday. So that could be what the person with the bad headache would fast. Now, they point out it's only if you have a bad headache you would have to make it up at all. If you're a muberes, you're, let's say, pregnant or breastfeeding, they're not even included in the fast. They don't have to worry about it. Now the last sif, yesh misanin gimel yomim zeicher l'Taanis Esther. Some daven fast 3 days as a zeicher for Taanis Esther. Again, this is only then a minhag. So the Shulchan Aruch really stresses not Rabeinu Tam Shita, but the other Shita, the Taanis Esther, is really more makel than the other fast days, like the other Rishonim, that it actually may have come later in the time of the Gaonim and not in the time of the Gemorah, and therefore, since it's basically a minhag and it's not necessarily a takana per se, so we can be makel. So that's the final pesak that one could be makel. The halacha of a nidche, anyway, in general, even Tisha B'Av or any of the fast days, once it's a nidche, then the halacha is you can eat if you're a chol even shein posakana. Once it's a nidche, you're allowed to eat even if you have a terrible headache, and there's no din of making it up. We don't find that. I said, except by Taanis Esther, you don't find such a thing as making it up. When it says to be mashlim the fast, I mean to finish the fast. Once you've eaten, you have to be mashlim. You can't keep eating the rest of the day. Let's say you have a bad headache and you eat something, you have to still finish fasting if you can. But the halacha of making it up, Yifru, it only says it over here. Anyway, so that's the final pesak. Now, next week, what I want to do is the sheet that I gave you out today, it talks about why the kfarim, why we don't have this halacha of reading early anymore. And there are many opinions as to how you interpret the Gemorah. That's what we'll do next week. And the week after that, I want to do, there's a famous Ramban, I've been talking about it. That's on one of these pages. I'll probably have to print it out again. And that the Ramban talks about the actual essence of the miracle, why the Chachamim allowed us to have a 2-day holiday, some keeping the 14th, and some, when usually the consensus is we don't like to have Jews doing different things. We like to keep, parity, everybody doing the same thing. We don't like to have one group doing one thing and one group doing another. It's called agudos, all right? That they should be doing it in different groups. So why over here did the Chachamim allow? Why didn't they just make a 1-day holiday? That's what the Ramban discusses. And he changes the whole concept of how the miracle of Purim was. So that we will see hopefully in 2 weeks. Then after that, I want to give a share about this halacha based on being mevatel dibri based on chavero, because there are instances where you are allowed, when the reason doesn't exist anymore, to change a halacha, and I want to show the rules. And then after that, the next share we're going to find out is actually going to show you. We talked about the Yerushalmi today of Yom Milchama, that the Yerushalmi. I want to show you that there's a system in the Yerushalmi, an approach that the Yerushalmi has that the Bavli doesn't, and a lot of things are different in the Yerushalmi, and you'll see that just by learning the first little bit of the Yerushalmi and comparing it to what we learned here. That'll be the next one. So we've got everything planned out for till Hanukkah.